Many ultra pacing plans are somewhat vague. Run steady, walk the hills, don't go too fast early on, then try and hold on towards the end. But for this race, I wanted something much more specific. So I've built a full 5k by 5k pacing plan for the Spire Ultra 53km trail race, using real data from runners who finished the course in the exact time I'm aiming for. The goal is sub 6 hours 30 minutes, and this is the strategy I believe can get me there. This is truly the most well thought out and well considered pacing plan I've ever had for an ultra. The problem with pacing an ultra is that it's nothing like pacing a flat road race. You can't just lock into one pace and hold it for the entire race. The terrain changes, the elevation changes, the surface changes, and how you feel definitely changes. Some sections might be smooth and runnable, others might be steep climbs, rough trails, mud, farms, you name it. Climbing over a tree there. Never know what you're going to get on these trails. So if you stick to one average pace the whole way round, you're massively oversimplifying things and very likely to have a bad time. What usually happens is people go too fast when it feels easy early on, then pay for it later. I know, I've been there, but I've also learned and improved with each of my previous races, and the results show that. So this time I wanted a plan that was specific to the course I'll be running, one that expects slower sections and identifies where time can realistically be made up to keep me on target. They say that ultras reward patience far more than bravery, at least for us mortal mid-pack runners. So instead of guessing, I looked at actual data from real runners who completed this same race last year. One finished in around 6 hours 5 minutes and the other in exactly the 6.5 hours that I'm looking for. Of course, I made use of AI to scale up the faster runners' times, so he finished in 6.5 hours as well, to end up with 2 real-life examples of how this race pans out for someone hitting my goal time on the day. I went through their Strava data and looked at how their pace changed throughout the race. Where did they slow down? Where did they gain time? Which sections were naturally slower because of terrain or fatigue later on? Then I compared all that with what I know from my own recce runs on the course and my own experience of having run the race in 2023. From there I built my realistic pacing targets for each 5km section. What I got is something like the holy grail of pacing plans, which gives me the best chance of smashing my goal on the day. The overall target is 6 hours 30 minutes on the 53km course. That works out at 7 minutes 20 per kilometre on average. But of course, I'm not trying to run 7:20 every kilometre. That would be entirely the wrong way to approach it. Early on, the plan is to be controlled and patient, to have a specific goal for each section, and to be able to tell instantly how far ahead or behind schedule I am. On the climbs and tougher sections, the pace naturally slows down, and that's completely fine. Then on the more runnable sections later in the race, that's where I can gain some momentum and make up some time. So really the strategy is simple. Stay disciplined from the start, not too fast, and hopefully not too slow, and give myself the best chance of hitting the goal, while having the information available to know exactly how I'm doing throughout the race. If I get that right, the finish time should take care of itself. Right then, let's break the course down 5k at a time and see what this plan really looks like. So this first 5k of the route, there's a mixture of terrain. It's undulating but not too many big climbs. So my target is to get this first 5k done in 32 minutes. So I'll need to average 6 minutes 25 per kilometre over this section, and I'm heading for what I've called Martin's Lane. There's a pile of cut down tree trunks next to Martin's Lane, and that's kind of the milestone in my head where this 5k ends, so I know where I've got to get to by 32 minutes. The second 5k section, heading to the 10k point of the race, I'm heading for Water Station, the first water station and official checkpoint of the route is at 10k, and there's a lot of climbing on this section. We reach the highest point of the race pretty much by the end of this second section, so my pace is expected to slow down. I'm going to be aiming for 8 minutes and 5 seconds per kilometre average, and that may well be a struggle because this, like I say, has the majority of the climbing for this early part of the race. I want to reach the water station at 10k by 1 hour 13 into the race cumulative, so I'll have that on my watch and I'll be looking out to make sure that I am going to get there on time, and just trying to pace myself on the various ups and downs and different bits of terrain accordingly. There's a real mixture, lots of farms to go through, woods, various different steep climbs, like going up this long farm driveway to the water station. So the third 5k section, heading towards 15 kilometers of the race. My pace for this section is 7:20, which happens to be exactly the average pace I need for the entire race. So this is going to be a typical section, if you like. Ups and downs, different terrain, technical bits, crossing rivers, all sorts involved, but there is enough downhill to be able to keep me moving at a reasonable pace. My little mnemonic to keep me going on this section is find rhythm. So I'm heading for a place that I've called Big Tree. So there's a particular tree at the 15 kilometer point that I can picture in my head, and I know when I get there I'll be at the 15 kilometer mark. So in case I didn't mention the little reminders for how to pace the first two sections, we had easy start and then climb relaxed. So here we are in find rhythm, heading for the big tree at the 15 kilometer point, and there it is. So on this fourth section, heading towards the 20 kilometer point, I'm heading for a landmark I've called Horse Field, because there's a field that has horses in and I need to get to the far corner of it. It should be 2 minutes 27 into the race by the time I get there. My pace for this 5k section is 7:25, so it's going to be a slightly trickier than average section, going slightly slower than I had on the previous section and slower than average. And my reminder to keep in mind for this section is steady. So I think that sums up this section. We do have the long climb up what I call Never Ending Lane, or Frithel Lane, I think its real name is. This does seem to go on for ages and ages, and it's all uphill. And eventually we plough through this farm, not literally, and I make a way over towards where Lineker reservoirs are. We don't quite get there by the 20k mark, but we do just get to the end of this horse field, which is not far from the reservoirs. So now, as I head towards the 25 kilometer point of the route, I'm heading for a spot called Keeper's Lane. There's a lay-by halfway down Keeper's Lane, which I know will be the next marker in the 25 kilometer point. I need to average again 7:25 per kilometer on this section. There's some uphills, there's some downhills, there's various terrain, gates, styles, you name it. And my little reminder for this section is fuel. I need to make sure I've got plenty of fuel going in these earlier parts of the race, because you don't tend to feel like it quite so much as the race wears on and you've been kind of forcing in the flapjacks and gels, and later on stuff from the food stations seems like a luxury compared to what you've been eating all the way through. So yeah, I just need to make sure I get it in early and make sure I've got plenty of supplies to keep me going in the later, more difficult parts of the race, and that I don't start flagging, bonking too early on, because I have got a 6.5 hour target to hit. So setting off down the rest of Keeper's Lane, we're heading for a spot that I've called Unston Gate, which is a gate at the top of a field in the village of Unston. I need to be doing this section in 8-minute pace, and my reminder for this section is long grind. So yeah, that kind of explains how this bit feels. Plenty of climbing, plenty of tricky terrain. We go over the curly bridge, over the bypass, and we need to be getting to the end of this section 3 hours 44 into the race altogether. So I need to get to that gate at the top of a fairly steep field in Unston by that time. Lots of nice views in this section because you do reach the top of some big hills, but there are some downs to kind of compensate for that as we head down towards the railway bridge at Unston. Here we are in the village of Unston, heading through a little wooded area before we do the climb up to the gate, which marks the end of this 5k section. From here, the next 5k, we are aiming for a spot that I've called Canal Field. There's a field just after Chesterfield Canal, and about halfway through that field, that'll be the next 5k point of the race. Want to be getting there by 4 hours 18 into the race, so you can imagine I'll be feeling quite tired by the time I get there. I need to run this section in a 6-minute 50 pace, so this is actually one of the faster sections. There's quite a lot of downhill as we head towards the river and the canal, obviously at the bottom of the valley in Chesterfield. So my little reminder for this section is runnable. So I need to, no matter how tired I'm feeling after around 4 hours of running, I need to get a move on here, run these downhill sections, make sure that I am averaging at least 650 per kilometre and making up some of the time that I will have fallen behind in those earlier tougher sections. So here we are, halfway through the canal field, and we're heading to a spot that I've called TP Bridge, or Transpennine Bridge. There's a spot partway down the Transpennine Trail where it looks like perhaps a bridge used to go over. There are definitely some big walls either side of the trail, so I've called it TP Bridge. I want to be there by 4 hours 55 into the race. This section, the average pace needs to be 7:20, so spot on the average for the entire race, and I've called it smooth, or rather AI helped me come up with that bit. Not sure how smooth it's going to be. There's plenty of undulations, plenty of changes of terrain, enough climbing, and the Westwood is not the easiest place to navigate through either. It's really nice place to run through, but you drop down into a valley and then have some huge steps to climb up, and you have to navigate you through those typical woodland paths where there's lefts and rights and forks, and you can't quite tell the lay of the land and where you're heading for, but hopefully my memory will save me on the day. So from TP Bridge we're heading towards Sutton Bench, so we get to Sutton Scarsdale Hall on the top of a hill. There's a little bench not far from there that looks down a hill, and part way down the hill from that bench we should be reaching the 45 kilometre point. 5 hours 32 into the race by the time I get there. Again, it's a 7:20 pace over this section, so it's what you might call typical for my target pace anyway. Whether I can actually manage it on the day is another question. But yeah, push steady is the little reminder I've got in place for this one. So it's going to be hard work. Don't need to go super fast, but I do need to be averaging 7:20 per kilometre if I can. Going up the hill past Sutton Scarsdale Hall, past the little bench, and then I just drop part way down the field and I should hit 45 kilometres. So from here I'm heading towards the 50 kilometre point, which isn't quite the end of the race, but it will be a nice milestone. Want to be there by 6 hours and 9 minutes into the race to give me a chance of finishing on target. This section, 7 minutes 25 needs to be my average pace. I will have that displayed on my watch. And tired zone is what I've called this. It's an honest assessment how I'm going to be feeling at this point in the race. Usual kind of undulations, mixtures of terrain, so yeah, the legs aren't really going to be wanting to run up many hills at this point, but I do need to keep making progress, keep my eye on that average pace and the lap pace for this 5k section, which is mainly what I'll be working from if my plan pays off. This final 3k section begins with a really steep climb up the Hill of Doom. I won't be running this bit, I don't imagine. It does start to level out or get less steep as you get towards the top of the hill, thankfully, and then there are some undulations as we head back towards North Wingfield and that finish line. 3k to do at 6-minute pace, maybe 7-minute pace will just scrape me under, but I've just got to keep going, get to the finish line by 6 hours 30 minutes or less. Of course, having a pacing plan is one thing, actually following it during a 53km race is another. So I've tried to make it as simple as possible on race day. I'm going to set my watch to auto lap every 5 kilometers. That means each time it laps, I'm effectively starting a new section of the course. On my main screen, I'll have lap pace, total time and distance. Lap pace is the key one, because that tells me how I'm running the section I'm currently in, not what happened an hour ago. Total time is useful because I can compare it to the pacing sheet and see whether I'm roughly on schedule. Distance just helps to confirm where I am in the race and to prepare for what's coming next mentally. Then on another screen, I'll keep average pace overall just as a backup reference. The main thing is I don't want to be constantly doing maths or second guessing myself. I just want to see at a glance how I'm doing. Run the section I'm in, tick it off, move on to the next one. In an ultra, the less mental energy you waste, the better. And each time I hit one of the milestones around the time I'm aiming for, that should give me a little boost to keep me positive and focused, all being well. Now of course, plans always look great on paper. The real question is what happens on race day. So that's the plan. A full pacing strategy for the Spire Ultra, built around real data from the race, knowledge of the course itself, and an optimistic target time. Of course, no plan survives race day perfectly, especially in an ultra. Conditions change, legs change, nutrition can go wrong, and sometimes you just have to adapt. But I'd much rather stand on the start line with a clear plan than just set off and hope for the best. The aim is simple: keep an eye on the watch, take it 5k at a time, and give myself the best chance of going sub 6 hours 30. On paper it makes sense, in my head it makes sense. Now I've got 53 kilometers to prove it. Have I overthought this, or is this a reasonable way to approach it? Let me know if you have any ideas on how to approach long races like this. This will be my 4th ultra distance race, and I'm hoping to see another step up in performance, with this pacing plan as the backbone of my approach. Wish me luck. Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me when I'm falling.